Can you give some practical advice? Because I know we have to wrap up soon, and I really wanted to bring this back to the original reason I reached out to you was so many of these messages, and like you talked about at the beginning, that you're getting from all manner of people. I saw you give some very good advice on Twitter for people who are encountering some of these anti-racism training in their workplace for questions that they could ask to disrupt or to make people think. Do you want to talk about that advice that you gave, or do you have advice for parents who are encountering this ideology from their kids?
Parents is harder. Parents is way harder. I'll give some very bland, useless advice for parents because I do want to give them something, which is to realize that your children, when they come at you with this, or your family members, sometimes it's adults, brothers and sisters and other family members, they are not thinking clearly. It's very likely that they will eventually think clearly again. And so what you don't want to do is lose the ability to patch that relationship up when that comes. You can't really consider, if somebody shut you out of their life, you can't really consider there to be a relationship. What you do have to start doing for yourself is being ready to welcome that person back with forgiveness even gets a little bit weird. Just like, there was never a problem. You were off on your quest. You had to do what you had to do, move on. You cannot talk somebody out of this. And if you try to leverage family ties, they will cut the family ties as the thing they're going to perceive as you trying to pull them back into fascism and racism and sexism. So you can't actually do it. Trying to use that family bond, the family bond will then be the thing turned against you and cut. And for kids who have grown up on the internet, defriending people and blocking them is no big deal. They will block you out of your real life too, even if you're your family members. So tread cautiously, give space, realize they're not thinking clearly, and be ready to invite them back and just try to, actually my mom is really good about this in general. So I could use her example, not that we were all that crazy, my brother and I, but, she just would try to no, we're going to connect anyway. We're going to talk about other stuff. If we can't talk about that, fine, but we're going to go talk about other stuff. We're family and we're going to do that. And it's not going to be about that. And we're just going to talk about the day to day and trying to maintain the relationship. So in cases where that works, wall stuff off that we're not going to deal with, and then otherwise, try to keep the relationship. And if it's too toxic, just step away and let them come back. I know it's painful. I know it's awful, but it is what you have to do, and be ready to welcome that family bond and friend bond back when those are relevant. Workplaces are actually a little bit trickier. I get a lot of requests. People want me, what do I write to my employer if they're taking us on? And I gave some suggestions on Twitter you might be referencing. I've done a few of these different things. One is, what do I write to my employer? One is, how do I behave in my diversity training if I have to go to one? And these are all, of course, context dependent. So I can give maybe 3 stories, and maybe that's enough to kind of wrap up, or 3 pictures. So one is, okay, so my employer starting to take this on, although that's getting a bit late and nobody's just starting to do this anymore. I want to try to intervene. What can I do? There's a general template to just kind of describe it. Helen and I are actually going to publish something on New Discourses as soon as we can. It's almost done describing this template, so you'll have it in writing there. But you want to express concern for the issues. You want to position. You have to position yourself as somebody who cares more and understands more. You understand the issue, you care about the issue, and in particular, you have to go do the homework. Whether you use New Discourses in my book, that's great. Whether you find it by reading primary sources, in some sense, that's even better. Make up your own mind. I'm not a cult leader. Don't want to be. Go read the primary sources yourself. If you want to read somebody else's analysis, to try watch podcasts, listen to YouTube channels, whatever it is, to kind of get informed. But you have to be able to show that you know what's going on both sides of it. So you have to say things like, a very successful line that I saw was, I had to read Robin DiAngelo's theories in my college classes last year or 2 years ago or whatever. So obviously a younger person. And so I've read the book and I understood it, and we talked about it, and I had some serious reservations from her approach. And this is the line of thought that it comes from. And it's you have to use the names. It's called critical race theory. Critical race theory relies on discourse theory, which arises out of, a line of philosophical thought that I think we might want to be more careful with. A lot of people are moving, and this is the next step, is to express, I think we're moving into this too hastily and forgetting that there are other approaches. Can we talk about doing other approaches? So then I said we're going to do 3 of these. So I'll blend into the second one, which starts here, but it's the finish of that one, which is to then volunteer. So a woman very successfully pushed back in one of her academic departments that I know, and I retweeted it. It got a ton of attention. It got like tens of thousands of likes. It was excellent to see that happen. And what she did was she volunteered. Usually what happens is these activists are eager to fill committees. So she went as soon as this stuff started to wake up in her department, and she said, well, this is going to be important in our department. I want to volunteer to lead the committee that's going to look into it. So then all of a sudden, she's A, interested in the problem, B, positioning herself as somebody who's going to guide how they're going to deal with it. And so then as the committee meetings started to roll out, all of the woke garbage started to come, and she was in the position of leading the committee. So she got herself in the committee, not just on it, but leading it. Ideally, you need to be leading it, but if you can't, at least you need to volunteer to be on it. You have to volunteer to do extra work if you want this to stop coming into your thing. And then she was able to just repeatedly listen, I hear you. That's one approach. What's your evidence that approach works? And they were like, well, asking for evidence is itself a part of the problem. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to use evidence. So she said some bridges got burned and some problems arose, but in the end it prevailed. And her department did not yet take any of this up. No, we're going to take an evidence-based approach and show me your evidence, and if you have it, we'll use that. But she volunteered, and this is the key. People need to volunteer to be on the committees. If it's at work, I want to be on as soon as this stuff shows up in your workplace, I want to be on the committee that looks into what we're going to do, if that's possible. A lot of times it's not in a company, it's just top down. But in departments like universities and schools, school boards, etc., get informed so you know what you're talking about. Show up and say, I want to volunteer. I want to be part of the organization. I want to be in the voting thing. I don't know how many videos over the past year or two that I've seen of school board meetings that are pushing a woke agenda into the schools, and they get shared as like, oh my gosh, this is really happening. And there's like 9 people in the room, and it's like open to the public, and there's like 9 people there. Mm-hmm. You don't want it in your kid's school? Show up. Write the letter.
Yeah.
Write the letter and show up. Do like Asra Namani did. Write the letter and then read it on a camera out loud and post it on social media too. Send the letter and then put a record on social media. Hey, I read this. So you have to show up. You have to be willing to take on that responsibility role. So that's if it's coming into your department and or if it's coming in, you can write a letter of concern. You have to show that you know it well enough, because that blitzkrieg move is to show that they know it and you're stupid. So we have to listen to what the people who know what they're talking about are. So it only takes a few other people or maybe one other person who knows and say, no, I know what this is and we're not going to do that. And it shuts down their whole program. They don't have a well-developed argument. They have rhetorical tricks to make people look stupid, like playing word games with colorblind or 2 + 2 = 4. So that's kind of 2 scenarios. What was the third one we wanted to look at? Is the one you actually asked me about, the hard one.
Well, you did for parents, and then you gave 2 workplace scenarios.
Sure. There was one more.
If you're in the I have the indoctrination room. If you're in the
in the meeting, that's right. So if you're in your meeting, this is the most context dependent one. Okay, so you have to know what you can get away with and not get away with. I would encourage people in the present moment to start thinking of themselves the second they're getting sent to these mandated trainings and with these different statements and policies, especially if your company's making policies, official policies. That's important. I would start thinking of yourself as a potential plaintiff. And so you start entering into this mindset that you are now collecting evidence that you are going to show to a lawyer. Thank you, coronavirus. Almost all of these meetings are happening by Zoom. So you can I have to unplug it. You can take your phone and you can record the meeting with your phone over here and showing the screen. You can't see my phone. It would just be set on like a little tripod. You don't know it's recording the meeting. These people hate being recorded. You couldn't get away easily with recording them in a live meeting. You can on Zoom. Haha. record that stuff and start thinking about your goal isn't necessarily it could be if you want to whistleblow on social media, or whistleblow by sending it to somebody with a big social media account. I would like say, hint, hint me, but I really don't want more of these. I've had thousands of them sent to me. But yes, that's a thing. Or you can think about sending them to your attorney. Because a lot of this stuff is compelled speech, legally actionable. Hostile working environment, legally actionable. This is discriminatory in many cases, legally actionable. Are you working in the government? Wow, this stuff looks like awfully religious in some ways. First Amendment. So start thinking of yourself as a potential plaintiff. Record the meeting secretly and start putting it on a drive somewhere that you're going to keep and be ready to show to somebody if something wrong happens. Now, if you feel like you can challenge it, which in these Zoom meetings, I've watched a few of them now that people sent me, it's like, holy, painfully boring. Like you get like 10 minutes of Q&A at the end, but mostly you just get ramrodded this like Peanuts teacher microaggression lecture for an hour and a half. If you have the opportunity to ask disruptive questions, the disruptive questions you have to steal from their playbook, which is deconstruction. You always point to the contradictions. You have to point out the contradictions. Wait, so if I understood this right, anti-racism actually is something that makes white. I have a choice between racism and anti-racism. Is it? So that's correct, and it's good to be anti-racist. But if I understand interest convergence correctly, me choosing to be anti-racist is in my own interest and deflects attention from racism. So isn't it racist of me to choose anti-racism? When you point out the contradiction, of course. Good. You are probably going to get fired for this because these people get pissed off when their stuff is exposed, and they will go report you to HR, and HR doesn't want an incident. So I'm not telling people to go do this like blindly. It's if you think you can pull it off and you want to try, take your own risk. But everybody else who sees you do that is like, huh. Plus they see somebody stand up to it, and they see the contradiction that they might not have saw otherwise. Yeah. And so that's a thing. That's the thing. And these contradictions, like spend some time working out where they are. People send them to me now all the time. They're like, hey, isn't this a contradiction in this? They're everywhere. It's internally contradictory all over the place. So work out a few. And when the moment arises, they bring up the thing. You can say, well, but isn't this, an example of whatever? There's good ones within microaggressions. There are good ones within anti-racism. Good ones within systemic racism, and good ones with whatever you want. And so you point that contradiction out. And just, you want to do it, though, mind your tone. Don't be a jerk. It's not that you're trying to disrupt the meeting specifically. It's actually that you want to get the person to explain more to where it looks like that they're, it's like when the Jehovah's Witnesses come knock on your door and you take them off script, and then they're like, we have to go back to the leaders to find that out for you.
Yes.
It's like you want to get those
them off script is key. That's key. And that's a great ending point, I think, or a great bit of advice for people, because they're just repeating the phrases. They're just, as you know, they're repeating the magic words, the tenets. But when you point to one of the contradictions, and especially if you do so in the way you're describing in this, like, I really want to help me understand this part, then the more they talk off script, it's going to reveal. Carter and I have noticed there's an old, I hesitate to say friend, a work colleague of mine who has just been through one of these trainings at Warner Media Group. He's a senior vice president at Fullscreen, which is a Warner company. I haven't heard from this guy in years, but he just took it upon himself to come to my page and start calling me a white nationalist, white supremacist and stuff. And he's a white guy. And because it's been filtered down from the academics, which has that veneer of like credentials and authority, it's been filtered down to this idiot in his workshop. And now, like, I got him to admit that this belief system is about teaching people that the best way to operate in the world is to judge people and treat them differently on the basis of race. And he outright said that. He took all the academic veneer off of it, and he's like, we must treat people differently on the basis of race. I'm like, thank you for saying that's exactly what it is, but there's so much obscuring that truth. Right. But I kind of, you can get people to admit these things, and if he's admitting that in front of a room full of people, then you can only imagine that there are people in that room who may have doubts about it, that it helps to wake them up. It's like, wait a minute, am I on board with an ideology that's about treating people differently on the basis of race?
Right. You can catch another good one is just to bring up like the simple, obvious answer. You can throw yourself under the bus a little bit and say, I've been trying to take this seriously, and now it's harder and harder for me to feel like I don't have to walk on eggshells around people in the office. And I thought that the goal of this was to create more psychological safety. What am I doing wrong? And just get into it. Get them. The goal, of course, would be to get them to explain that this stuff actually doesn't work. You could talk about, we've been doing these diversity trainings, and it seems like the office is more tense, not less. And maybe they're going to say something like, oh, it'll get worse before it gets better. But that's usually the sign of a quack when they start telling you that the medicine's going to make you worse before it makes you better. It's like, is this chemotherapy for our office? Is that what you're trying? What's going on here? Those kinds of questions, do we have a common cold and you're trying to feed us chemo? Is that a good idea? You don't want to get too sarcastic with it, but you do like bringing out, like, I feel like I'm trying to do the work and I feel like it's making me more racist, not less. What do I do about that? Because I want this to go away. Like, why was not thinking about race, or that example we talked about where it's like those weird sessions. It's like, so yeah, we had the sensitivity training, and now like all the people in the office keep telling me what racists they are, and I'm really uncomfortable working here. Was that supposed to happen?
I love it.
Right.
I mean, I don't love that this is happening, but I love the innocence with which you're proposing the question.
I mean, that's what you take it at face value, and instead of like the whole game is to try to make you play in their sophistication of magic words, like, oh no, I know what's going on. Of course, this is going to work. This is the road this is the yellow brick road. We'll get there eventually. It's just like, sorry, teacher, I don't think it's working. Like, this is supposed to make me less racist, and I feel more racist. What's happening?
So because there's so many contradictions, are you saying the way to defeat this is to take it seriously?
I think people should start taking it seriously right away.
No, but actually, I mean, like, if you take it seriously and you're sincere about it, you can easily get yourself to a spot where it's kind of exposed as contradictory.
Yeah, exactly. Because you run into these double binds. You can also, here's one out of cynical theories. You could actually ask this in your diversity training, and maybe we can use this as the last example. So you could say, kind of hypothetical situation at work. I have to go and greet a customer. Two people walk in at the same time. One's white and one's black. And if I understand this, you've said that racism permeates every interaction. So I have to greet the customer, and I have to work with the customer, and it's going to take, say, 5 to 10 minutes to work with the customer. And meanwhile, the other person's obviously going to have to wait because they both arrived at the same time, and maybe I'm the only person in the office or in the shop or whatever. So I go up to, say, one of them's white, one's black. I go up to the white person first. Isn't it racist of me to do that, though, because it means I'm favoring white people over black people? But if I go up to the black person first, doesn't that send the signal that I don't trust black people, so I have to get rid of them faster, and I don't want them wandering around the building unattended? And so that was racist too. So am I racist no matter what I do? Like, how do I tell me what I'm supposed to do in this situation? So you paint the picture and you say, I understand your theory. Both directions make me racist. What am I supposed to do? I just want to do the right thing. What's the right thing in that situation? I can't approach the white person and I can't approach the black person. What do? Run from the building? You don't have to get sarcastic, but seriously, if you do ask, just here's a problem. It's a double bind. Look for those kinds of things that are applicable to your situation. If I say this, it's racist because that. If I say the opposite, it's racist because that. Tell me, teacher, what's the resolution to that contradiction? What do I do? What's the right answer? Because a lot of this is weaponized complaining. They haven't thought out what the right answer is. They don't know. It's don't do the bad thing. But everything's the bad thing.
Right.
Everything's a bad thing.
I just wanted to throw one more thing out there because I hear this a lot. I hear a lot of I've spent a lot of time advising CEOs and stuff, and I don't think everyone really realizes this. human resources, for a lot of founders and CEOs, human resources is viewed as this like necessary evil, like, oh crap, we're big enough, we got to hire an HR person. They don't really care about the HR department very much. They like keep them out of legal trouble and whatever and bring some resumes in, but they don't. You have to police your HR department extremely well, because that's the vector where this ideology comes through most often. It comes through the HR department. HR is the social justice beachhead into your corporation.
That's true. You absolutely do have to watch that. And I've described this thing as the Trojan horse a bunch of times. And, the story of the Trojan horse is that it's full of assassins who kill the guards and open the gate so the army can come rushing in. I mean, we could use that, but I think it's actually that this Trojan horse is full of bureaucrats. So where are the busybodies going to want to be employed? HR, administrative roles, bureaucratic committees. So depending if it's your HR department, you're going to have to police your HR department. You do not want this in your HR department, because it's going to just dissolve your entire corporate culture from the inside. If it's administrative kind of committee roles, if you are also a person in that organization, so it's like, university committees or whatever, volunteer to be on the committee. Go get in their way, because the activists want those are the coveted roles of the activists, and getting in their way is absolute. How many people are rushing to go be on the diversity board at their university who don't believe in the diversity theory? Why not? Why not fill the diversity board with people who have a different view of diversity? And when that doesn't work, raise a stink, because they're going to try to get rid of you. So volunteer for those committees that nobody wants to do them, but get in their way. And if you're in a corporation, it's like, I can't urge you, strongly enough, if you're a CEO listening to this or that ever hears this, you do not want your HR department to go woke, because you will not win. You will now, letting your HR department go woke is setting up a mob shakedown in your organization until it's done, until you're giving your job over to somebody and everybody else is giving their job over. This thing really is a mob shakedown, and because it uses oppression as the thing, the ante keeps getting kicked up the ladder to whoever claims the most vigorous oppression thing. And I can tell you right now, if you're the CEO, it doesn't matter if you're white, it doesn't matter if you're black, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, it's not you.
Yep.
You are in the way, you have the coveted position, and they will come for you before long.
Yeah, and they'll destroy the company along the way.
Because they don't care about that.
Right.
They don't care at all.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the double bind there. For that, not a double bind, but the double win. They win either way. If they can't take your company over and it collapses because they tear it apart inside, it's just one more racist company that bit the dust. Problem solved. If, however, they take it over, it just becomes a woke organ. So it becomes something that does their bidding, or if it wouldn't do their bidding, it gets stamped, can't be re-educated. And when it collapses, that's a victory. You kill off the can't be re-educated thing. It's literally the cultural equivalent of sending your company to the gulag.